Start the party.
Hello there, Edwin here. I'm here with my good friend Steve, DigiMarCon. Now honestly, it's a bit of an honor, if I'm being honest. It's a bit
Thanks,
of an honor.
dude.
Like, I met you 10 years ago?
Well, there was a time when you interviewed for a job at BFO, and that's when we first met.
Yeah, and then we lost touch.
Yep.
And then we got back in touch a few years ago because of Nepal. It's pretty surreal, man.
Yeah,
we
keep running into each other.
Yeah, we keep running into each other.
Pretty awesome.
So it's pretty great. Like as an SEO coming up and being aware of BFO and kind of like the impact you all have to the search space, it's really nice. It's really nice.
Thank you. That means a lot. We've been doing it now. I think this is our 14th year.
That's pretty wild.
It's so weird to look back to think about. It was spring of 2009. And it was actually 2008. My partner and I, Dan, were doing different things, but we came together and we started winning clients. We started sharing people, and we looked up at each other. We won a giant account, and we looked up at each other and said, we should probably share money. and that was
nice.
Sort of the start of it. So we actually count in 2008 before we were a real company. And then as you're sitting down to sort of put pen to paper to say, okay, what is it? What kind of organization? What do we build? I don't know. We got to service the client. So it literally took us a year to sign our operating agreement, but we incorporated together.
Wow,
and
a
figured things out.
year?
Yeah,
really?
Yeah. It was just we were so busy, and we knew we needed it because partnerships have to have a good operating agreement, or at least some foundation. So many partnerships fail because they don't have one. So we kept kicking the can down the road, and then we dust it off. We'd edit it a little bit. It would go to me, and I'd be lazy about getting it done because I was busy. Then I'd make some changes with the lawyer, get it back to Dan, make some more changes. So it was quite literally a year before we got it signed.
That's wild. So folks may not know this. You know this. I've been independent for about a year and a half now. And one of the things I've gotten better at, I don't know if it's perfect, but writing agreements. Right now I'm in talks with one person or one brand, and we've been chatting for about 3-4 months on just getting it signed and getting it started. And it's just, honestly, it's just like an audit or so of sorts.
Yeah.
So I'm still trying to figure that out. So with you, did y'all even have like an LLC at all? Or?
Yeah, we had an LLC starting in 2009. Before that, each of us had our own LLC. So we were invoicing and billing. Actually, one of the funny stories about coming together, my wife had become my accounting department, my bookkeeper. She is a graphic designer by trade. And I think it's fair to say that she hates finance, but she did it as a favor to me because I was working. And you're an independent, right?
Yeah.
You realize that my my greatest mistake, or my naivete when I started as an independent myself, was this idea that if I could just bill 30 hours a week, I'll be great. What you don't think about is how much time you have to spend looking for work. You have to bill the work. You've got to have accounting. You got to have other stuff. You have to have these other things around it. You got to get out and network. So I think I was spending, in the early days, it was 20 hours a week of work, trying to pay the bills. And then you're hustling, trying to meet people, and you're spending 30 hours a week hustling, trying to find business and such. It's a crazy space.
I get it. No, I get it. 20% of my time is for SEO, and 20% of my time, as you know, is for my family food distribution. So in that 20% of SEO, of 20 hours, I should say, 20 hours for SEO, that'd be ideal. But I'm talking about building my personal brand, making sure I follow up on invoices, finding new clients, pitch, and you can't bill for like proposals or pitches.
No.
I was gonna say the B word. Not for that.
We sent some proposals to. Never mind. I like to use the B word either.
So like it takes a lot, and like a lot of folks say, did you ever like consider, like at my age, did you consider like this being where you want to be in terms of an agency, or at all, like in this SEO space?
So I found out along the way. I love search. I love digital. I also used to love technology, and I've come to realize that I love humans, and I love working with great clients. I love working alongside great individuals. I love to help, support, empower, and see people grow. And I think that that's sort of my responsibility to the agency now is to help support the growth of the team.
I think you do a good job at that too. I mean, every time I talk to you, it's always about your team, in a good, healthy way.
Yeah, we try like heck. I try to bring things in. I try to help everybody grow beyond this idea, because we can always get more technical.
Yeah.
It's the soft skills, right? So we've taught internally project management. We opened up leadership training to everybody on the team.
Awesome.
We did that for a year, and it was optional. People could sign up if they had time.
We'll
probably bring that back.
With leadership, how did you manage that training? Because I would love to do that. Family, part of my life.
So I've been brainwashed by a couple of movements. One is called Small Giants, which has fundamental pillars at the base. And don't quote me on the pillars because I won't remember them. But it's this idea that your people in your community are as important as your finances. And early days with BFO, well, I'll go on a little tangent here to come back to that question.
You're fine.
I was lost. I thought I wanted to run my own business. I wanted to run an agency because it was fun and I loved starting. But I never wanted to be a one-man band. I always wanted to build a team because I loved working with people. And I realized that that's what I wanted to be, is that working with people. Then sort of along the way, as you grow, you're sitting there. We've got a team of, I don't know, maybe it was 10 people at the time, 3 or 4 years in. And Dan, who's my business partner, as you know, we're meeting out bonuses. It's March. We finished our taxes. Do we have money left from last year? And he and I did retreats. We'd take our wives, we'd go to Kohler, Wisconsin, or Galena, Illinois, and we'd hide in a hotel for a couple of days, wrap up the year, and then sort of plan for the next year. And we sat there, and I won't use anybody's real names, but we're looking at the list of humans. We're looking at their salaries. We're looking at bonuses they got last year. And I realized that we had to give most of those people the same bonus or more for the last year because we hadn't done anything to set higher or lower expectations. And it really ticked me off. It wasn't the kind of company I wanted to be a part of, where the boss was hiding in a closet. Okay, Edwin, here's your bonus. I sure hope he likes it. And I was lost. I thought about selling the agency.
Really?
I thought about getting out. I said, this isn't what I wanted. It wasn't what I wanted. We had won. We made the Inc. 5000 list then. Our first year on Inc. 5000. And great. We got the plaque, put it up in the office, started using some of it in our advertising. It was a cool honor. They have a conference every year. And they sent me a note, come out to the Inc. 5000 conference, you're an honoree, and they wanted $2,500 for it. Like, no way, man. I don't have that kind of money.
You don't feel honored paying up $2,500?
No, I would go pay $2,500 to be here at this event because there's an opportunity to double my money. That's fair. But going out there was no opportunity to make money.
How you know what? Is it just networking?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically all it is, right? Because, here it's a digital marketing conference.
Yep.
So, you have like-minded individuals.
Exactly.
Not to say that you're not going to find any out there, but the pool is pretty big.
It's a very broad range of people. Yeah. So as the conference gets closer and closer out there, I keep getting notes from Inc. Hey, you know what? We really want you to come. How's $1,500 for the trip? And it kept getting lower and lower. And then finally, it was quite literally about 2 weeks before the event. Hey, we're saved a free spot for you. And I said, well, I've got miles and I've got a free spot. You know what? I'm going to go. I'll pay the $300 a night for the hotel room. It was a beautiful resort in San Diego, and it changed my life.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Accidentally, there was a group there. Well, not accidentally. They were there on purpose.
Coincidentally.
Yeah, coincidentally. Thank you. Small Giants was there. And I was wandering around with somebody I'd met. He runs a software development firm in Boston. And there was a happy hour. And it was sponsored by Small Giants. Okay, let's go to happy hour. You go and you mingle, you hang out. So I'm wandering around this beautiful pool deck outside, and we grabbed a beer. And he asked me, have you been up to any of the Q&A tables? And I said, no, what are they about? He said, it's that group Small Giants, and they're talking about culture.
Okay.
So we walk up these 4 steps, And I said, pick a table. And as fate would have it, he picked the table of my dear friend Tom Walter, who runs a company called Tasty Catering that happens to be in Elmhurst, right outside Chicago.
Wow.
So Tom, as we get through this conversation, he's talking about culture versus profit. And I can be a bit outspoken.
Yeah.
So Tom and I are having this wonderful conversation. Ultimately, he convinces me that stated culture is very, very important. Implied culture fails. So you've got to put your values, your vision, your mission together and get your team to buy into this idea.
So can you explain to me stated culture versus implied culture?
It means you put it on the wall and you speak to it.
Okay.
So, Tom, no offense, but I think your company's a little too overzealous with your values, because anytime there are more than 3 people at the company in a room, they have to read the values.
Oh, wow.
But it's also a good way to remember the values.
Okay.
So they have, if I remember correctly, 7 values.
Sure.
We have 3 at BFM.
Okay.
And so we ended up, and the team built the values later. But it changed my life in that way, that I got to know the small giants. I got to know several of those people. I found a lifetime friend and mentor in Tom, who I call now when I've got, you face business issues, right? You have people you call?
Yeah.
Tom is that guy.
That's awesome.
He's the root. He's the first person I call. He's like, you shouldn't be talking to me. You should be talking to Bo. You should be talking to them. So it's been a wonderful relationship. Changed my life. Put some amazing people in my life and in my world. Helped me see a greater purpose for the business, and it's been a cool ride in that regard. In fact, that conference is going on right now, and I wasn't able to get to Detroit.
Well, what is it, like 6-hour drive from here?
Let's go.
All right, let's do it. Gonna wrap up this. No. But that's awesome. Yeah. That's really great. And it sounds like it rekindled kind of like your passion and your position.
That led us ultimately to open book management. Open book management, where everybody on the team knows how much money we have, how much we make, what the profits are. And bonuses are self-directed. If the company hits, I think, don't quote me on this because I'm probably wrong, but I think it starts at 12 or 15%. If we hit that profit margin, we start paying out bonuses at certain levels, and it goes up to 25%. If we hit 25% margin, everybody gets a bigger bonus. 15%, you get a small slice of the pie.
That's so cool. So it sounds like, to me, everything you're doing at your agency, right, by design, like intentional. You have more intent behind it.
There's a ton of intent. I believe strongly that the more you support and empower your team, and the more you listen to them, the better off your organization is going to be. And I think we went through a period for a few years where we were failing to innovate as an agency. And this space changes every day.
Yeah.
And when I say failing to innovate, I'm just going to say it out loud that Dan and I got in the way of innovations.
I think you may have mentioned this to me not so long ago.
Yeah.
And I was pretty shocked by it, because I always thought, I still do think of you like as just someone who cares to push up.
Well, I do it more now because I realized the failure before. It would bubble up to Dan or I, and there was some sort of, I don't know that it was intentional. It's that we got in the way of some of the new ideas.
Yeah.
And I came to realize, like, I was talking to John Phillips yesterday. You met him. And he was sharing some new ideas, and he said, I'd like to present, I'd like to talk to you. I said, John, what I'd like to do is I'd like to support you and invest in you. Let's figure out what that looks like, so that I don't have to be in every meeting, and you have the latitude to build what you think will be successful.
Yeah.
And I want to do that. Do I want to be kept in the loop? Absolutely. We're making an investment. I need to understand what the milestones are, what the goals are, but I want to take 2 steps back and support them in building 2 new products or 3 new products, whatever they want to bring to market. And I want to support the innovation that way. What is a coach of mine once said? He's like, set the vision and get out of the way.
I like that. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Hard to do.
Oh, I imagine so. As I was coming up as a manager, I think that's a hurdle I had to face as well. It's just like
Yeah.
delegate. I'd be doing 60 hours a week, thinking that I had to do everything because I was the only one who can do it.
Yeah.
But what are the SOPs? What do they stand for? Or something in process?
Standard operating procedures.
Yeah, standard operating procedures. Building those out helped a ton. But in all honesty, kind of having faith in your group, having faith in your team, letting them drive,
Imagine if you're anything like most people I've talked to who've been promoted from within a team to the top of the team, managing your peers.
Yeah.
You don't get training to go with it. And what happens is your workload change. You simply get more work now because you're responsible for the team.
That's how it was.
And then there's this other part. It's to give your friends work to do.
Yeah.
You can share work, right? You can share problems and stuff, but now you're the boss. And I call it the bridge of management, where it takes people a year to 2 years to cross this bridge to where they actually, and it's not, listen, I've been a manager for 30 years and I still don't delegate well. You still keep too much.
Yeah.
I'll delegate at the 11th hour instead of 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
Hey, Edwin, can you help me with this? Yeah, I probably should have got it done last week. And you're like, crap, Steve, not again. But it's that bridge that we're on when we become managers and learning how to lead and manage that team.
Mhm.
But most of the time, at least for the first 6 months to a year, it's just a lot more work, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is. For me, it was a drastic change because, kind of like you said, you're expected to do the same work, or at least make sure it gets done. But you also have to make sure they're trained up, manage, file all the kind of paperwork that comes with it, and find new business.
Yeah,
that was rough. So I want to ask you something. So going back to the whole your organization with intent. You've heard of the book Start With Why?
Yeah.
So do you feel like it helps, or do you incorporate Start With Why when you delegate? Because I find it's great. I find it's great.
So I've got there's a little too much honesty that's about to come your
Whatever
way.
you want.
I have a serious amount of issue with Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why.
Really?
Yes. We're a services business.
Sure.
And I can't go back like he did and look at Apple and look at Apple's mission and say, here's our why, what we are, here's what we do. And he somehow decided to avoid all of the Gil Amelio years at Apple, shiningly about how cool Apple was as a why. And no offense to Simon, he's absolutely brilliant, but I found it really difficult to apply those principles to a services business.
Interesting.
We don't have a product and you're not this global team, and I get there's got to be a why, but in our why now is really sort of that small giants mantra and support your community and get out and do stuff. So we'll go clean parks and things like that, but we don't have something that's on the wall that says this is our why. I found it really, really difficult to do that. Even I'll take that back to, I mentioned we became an open book management company.
Yeah.
In open book management, because our inventory it's ours.
Yeah.
Right? We don't have any other inventory. We don't have a department over there that stocks $250,000 of inventory. There's no liquor over there. There's no food over here. And it's very difficult in open book management to apply some of the principles of open book because you want people to have a stake in the outcome. And if you were a department head, you had inventory or you had, income and expenses, you could start to manage that and you could look for improvements in your own group. For us, as an agency, right, it's efficiency gains. You can do something, there's a new way to do this, but it's really hard to track and measure, where if I've got 58 cases of beans and I'm turning them over faster, I'm reducing my inventory, now my cash flow improves. In an agency, it's a little different. And it could simply be that we didn't apply it right. And even reading Simon Sinek's book, it's like getting to apply it. But I believe, despite some of my, if you will, my misgivings with Start With Why, I have to believe that some of those principles are alive and well at BFO.
I think so. I would say so.
Yeah.
Well,
I think we do have a purpose.
I think one of the biggest things I took away from the book was not necessarily associating a why with a mission or an organization, but even micro, like very, very micro in the fact that, let's say I'm kicking off a new campaign, or I'm trying to build out the content strategy for for whatever client, and I explained why. why that's significant, ultimately how that ties back to KPIs and goals and the organization. So that's how I explain, that's how I incorporate why. And it's always pretty well received, because once an individual understands why we're doing something, as opposed to like, oh, now I have to do something else.
Yeah.
Like, you have a stake in the game now. You have an understanding of what's tied to it. So that's how I.
That's a cool application. That works. It's akin to making sure you're on the same page with regard to goals.
Yeah.
It becomes that greater purpose of, if somebody check, they want to know what the is it an expense or an investment? So what's the why?
Yeah.
What are you doing for me next week?
Yeah.
Versus, I'm sure you've had clients that they want to sign for 20 hours, 30 hours, 40 hours a week, a month, whatever the case is, and then they want you to report on your hours. And I know you pretty well, and I think what you want to be reported on is value.
Yeah.
I want to be reported on growth. I want to be reported on change and value. What are we contributing to your team, and you personally and professionally, your department and your business? And what does that look like in terms of growth? In fact, just this morning I saw a compliment from one of our clients come in.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it was a compliment that said, "Hey, I just wanted to say," and the client's been a little bit difficult recently, and a lot of turnover at the client, some other, and they sent a compliment that they had their second best e-commerce day ever yesterday.
Very cool.
In what is a down market for them, etc. So they threw a high five at us, and it's really cool. But this client, same thing. You talk about that. Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
It's hard to get them to think about their destination.
Yeah.
What does success look like? It's very difficult to pick out. I got to pick something out of the air. So it leads us to try to be a more strategic partner.
Yeah, that makes sense. I love. So as someone who's also managing, any recommendations, book or otherwise, in terms of like how to manage better, how to become a better manager?
Oh, there are so many. I just listened to Unreasonable Hospitality.
Unreasonable Hospitality.
It is. So I've got a mantra that says, BFO, a service business like ours, your business, my business, it's just like a pizza place or a sandwich shop.
Yeah.
And if the food stinks and the service stinks, you're telling people, never work with Steve.
Yeah.
If the food stinks but the service is okay, would you go back? Maybe. You're like, okay, maybe the food, or maybe it was an off day, maybe it was a new chef. All right. Well, if the food's great and the service stinks, maybe Steve, our server, was having a bad day, or he's new.
Yeah.
Right. But you may go back, right? You may not, but you're really not telling anybody about it. Now, if both are exceptional, you get a great slice of pizza and great service, you're telling your friends about it.
Yeah.
This is where we want to be as a service business.
Sure.
You want to provide great performance and exceptional service at the top. And when the book was recommended to me, I was on a podcast a few months ago with David Baer, and he's sort of this bit of a marketing management leadership guy, super cool, wonderful to be on his podcast. He recommended the book.
Really?
I scratched my head a little bit, but then I realized it was my analogy, the restaurant business. And this is a story about, what's his name, who started Steak and Shake, a series of very famous restaurants in New York City.
Sure.
Danny Meyer.
I was going to say Danny Sullivan.
Danny Sullivan. He's in this circuit. He's not in the restaurant circuit.
Yeah.
He works for Google now, doesn't he?
I think so, yeah.
But Danny Meyer's restaurant group, 11 Madison Park, was this flagship restaurant. And the story goes, the guy who wrote the book and his partner were offered the opportunity to take over 11 Madison Park. First, he was a general manager, and then he was offered the opportunity to buy it because Danny found so much value in these gentlemen operating the restaurant. And they set out on a mission to become the number one restaurant in the world. And they achieved it.
That's awesome.
And they got to a point, and they, kind of that kick in the teeth moment. Oh, we didn't get it. What happened? Like they cracked the top 50 one day or one year. I think they were number 50 or something, if I remember correctly. And the restaurants in the top 10 kind of snickered. And it was, it's this weird group. But yet, then they also had a good friend who was always in the top 5. So they went to great lengths to get there. But as the story goes, they talk about the leadership challenges, and most restaurants are led by food.
Okay.
And what they decided was that the food and service could be equal players in the game of becoming a great restaurant. So they started breaking rules that they started breaking fine dining rules, is the way I should say it. In their dining room, they started doing things. They did some really cool stuff. So they started keeping notes on the regular clients.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So when the regulars would come in,
though.
the regulars would come in and they'd know what their favorites were. They know if they had a regular cocktail, if they had dessert, they knew when their birthdays were. They went as far as having, I forget what they call these folks, but they're sort of gifters.
Yeah.
New people would come into the restaurant. If you and your family went there and it was a special day, because it's always special, you got to get reservations months in advance. Your server would come to the table, learn something about you. And these crafters, they had stuff there. They would make things or they'd run out and they would give you, as the customer, a gift at your table. Your server would listen to the conversation, relay it to the gifters, who would then run down the street and get you a box of the world famous chocolates because they heard you say, we're not going to get out of here before they close. So you send somebody down the street to bring the chocolates back. They do this sort of stuff, and that's that exceptional service level that you're going to remember. And P.S., the food's amazing anyway. So in most fine dining establishments, the food's great, and your server, what else can I get you?
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it's a wonderful read. It's a wonderful read, and it fits our businesses, by the way.
It's unreasonable
hospitality.
Unreasonable hospitality. That's awesome. So I'm trying to read more. I am trying really hard. But it ebbs and flows for me a lot because I'll read a business book and I want to apply as much as I can to both my businesses. And I get so burnt out. So now I read fiction. Right now I'm reading a book called Nobody Meets the Panic. It's a comedy. It's really great. But I was at the library and I was telling the librarian, hey, I want something cool, something I can relax, I can wind down on, because I read at the end of the night right before bed. And she's like, she pulls out this mystery. She's like, this is great, this is awesome. She's like, the author has a habit of making it seem as if you can't really tell if it's a person who's behind the mystery or like it's kind of like entity, like mysterious, creepy. And I was like, pass. I'm going to bed. Like I don't want to be freaked out before I go to bed. So right now I'm just reading comedy. It's really great.
So I get lost in business books, and then I have to be found in fiction. So I read a lot of spy novels, and
how is that?
I dig it. I've been what's the one? I can't think of the series that I've been reading. I'll think of it eventually.
I struggled because I wanted to get into that, but there are so many authors that have written so many books. I couldn't.
The Gray Man. That's the series I got into, and it's now 12 books deep.
Wow.
And I look forward to each new book coming out because I can stop thinking about business when I read it. But it's funny, even when I read the fiction, I find ideas for business.
Really?
I find sayings or quotes and little things.
Yeah, I can see that.
Lately, I've been buried in World War II.
World War II books?
I've read 2 World War II books recently and watched a miniseries. Yeah. Well, one. So Eric, he wrote Devil in a White City. Are you familiar? It's about the World's Fair in Chicago and the mass murderer here at the same time. So he weaves the Daniel Burnham story alongside that's so cool. What the heck? H.H. Holmes is the mass murderer, and he weaves the two stories together. And it's set where down here in Chicago, we're on the museum campus now, but a little further south of us, where the Museum of Science and Industry is, was the World's Fair. And this is where Westinghouse lit up the whole World's Fair. They called it the White City because it was the first time they used electricity to light up something like that. Nikola Tesla had experiments there. It was super cool. So they brought the world's first Ferris wheel. And then in the background is this guy, H.H. Holmes, who has what they eventually call the murder castle right in the same area. And it's got all these secret rooms and passages and gas chambers. And he is killing many, many people a month. They say that he may have killed upwards of 200 people in the murder case. Now he was convicted of 19 or 20 some murders. It's crazy. He had a crematorium in the house. It's crazy. He used to sell skeletons to universities.
Businessman.
He was a businessman. businessman. But yeah, it's a great story. So Eric Larson, I think, is the author. He wrote
Devil in the White City.
Devil in the White City is that book.
That's pretty cool.
What is the Beast book? It's about World War II, pre-World War II, 1933-34, Germany, when Hitler becomes chancellor, and Roosevelt sends a new ambassador over. He plucked a guy out of the history department at the University of Chicago, made him an ambassador, and he was out of his element as an ambassador.
Really?
He had some history, had studied in Germany, but apparently most ambassadors, they called it they called it a club of some sort, but most of them were wealthy, and they got appointments because they all went to Yale or Harvard, and they were rich, and they supported, they gave money to the president, so they got to be the ambassador to France. And this guy was simply the best fit to be an ambassador. He wasn't wealthy, and he went over there, and he was a frugal ambassador, but it tells the story of these inflection points of Hitler coming in pre-war Germany.
Sure.
And there are these weird, so it's really cool. So I read that, and but in the Garden of the Beast, I think. So anyway, so it's crazy. Before that, there's another author, Brad Meltzer. He's a history guy, but also writes a lot of spy novels too. He wrote something about World War II. I picked that up first, read that, and I didn't like Garden, if that's the name of it. When I first started reading it about 4 years ago, I kept putting it down. After I read Brad Meltzer's book, I knew the characters, I knew the names, and I started flipping through this other book. This one makes sense now. Oh, it's super cool. I've been lost in it for about 6 weeks.
That's great. That's awesome. I love those books that you come around, you come across, and they do make a pretty good impact on you. I read The Alchemist earlier this year.
I haven't read it.
It's so it's so amazing. It's so amazing. You know what? I think kind of like movies. So movies, any media, honestly, you come across something and it kind of like resonates with you at that certain period of time, based on whatever conditions or circumstances you find yourself in. And Alchemist did that in terms of books.
Cool.
It's very. I think for the most part, it was kind of like just. Again, be centered, be present. Another medium that really did that for me, that hit me at the right time, the right place. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
Really?
Yeah.
I've heard of that. I haven't picked it up.
I love it. It's a movie.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Okay, then my wife's probably seen it.
It's awesome. Like if you know what, I try to get my wife to get into it, and she's not a movie buff like I am, so it's a tough one, but I know when I like a movie, I'll buy the Blu-ray just to have it.
Just to have it?
Just to have it.
File it away?
Yeah.
Keep it for later?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Well, that shows you how profound an impact that can have.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I like the idea. We're very similar in that regard, that you read a lot of business books, but then you have to take some time off.
Yeah.
I will go through it. I'll run 3 or 4 months. I'll read business book. I don't want to read.
Yeah.
And then you have to find we were talking about our parents earlier. My father used to read a lot of old Western novels, and his wife, after he passed, sent me a box of these.
Wow.
So it's sort of an ode to my old man. I started reading a bunch of Louis L'Amour novels, and they're all the same. It's all cowboy, bad guy, sometimes Indian, sometimes not. There's always a girl involved, and the good guys always win. And they're so predictable, yet in some way there's such charming little stories to read. So I did that too. So I still have a whole bunch that I haven't read. How many books were there?
Well, I asked you, I think yesterday, because we talk and we catch up with what's going on in life, and I even asked you, would you ever write a book? I would read that.
I said no.
No. Well, I guess a chat is just as good as nothing.
I think where I would land if I could record a book.
With AI, you might be able to. Yeah,
might be able to do that. Well, as I mentioned yesterday, I can write. I just don't like to write. So what I've done now is I record.
Yeah.
I'll have the team prompt me with questions,
Yeah.
and I'll record answers to those. Sometimes they use the video.
Yeah.
Sometimes they simply use the transcripts and turn it into content.
That's pretty
I
cool.
need to do more.
Yeah.
And I kind of like it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, so like kind of like this podcast here. I just like to talk. I like to talk. So I started my own podcast. I mentioned not too long ago. If you're all interested, Out of Office Chat, where I just ramble. I ramble, and it's a good outlet. I just like to chat what's going on, tie it back to other aspects of my life. It's pretty good. And it's funny because I started because I wanted to make it non-business because I'm managing two businesses and my head can split, but it always ties back.
There's always, no matter what. It's sort of funny that all the roads lead back. And it's funny. Do you ever find, we talked a lot about books. You ever find you have a book and it's lying there, and it's a business book or a fiction book, whatever the case may be, fiction or nonfiction, doesn't matter. It's sitting there, and at some point, it's the right time to read it.
I think The Alchemist was that.
Yeah,
that's what The Alchemist was for me.
That's super cool.
Yeah, it is pretty neat.
I'm gonna have to go read that.
Yeah,
It's
a really
so many
easy
books
read.
at home. I got stacks. I'm like, am I ever gonna read these? I want to read them so badly.
We have guests, and we have a little shelf for them, and they're like, "Wow, you guys read so much." It's like, well, we've only read like maybe 10% of all of them.
There's a book that I finally got in. It's called Appreciative Inquiry. It's a strategy modality. It's a little bit about creating a vision and goals.
Okay.
If it's this idea that it's December 31st, 2024. You've set out on this goal, this journey. You've achieved everything that you wanted to achieve. What does that feel like?
Yeah.
What are you doing? What did you do to get here? What changes did you have to make? What challenges did you face? And it allows you to sort of vision it's about 18 months from now. You vision, 18 months in the future, and you start planning your own celebration and working backwards.
That's so cool.
And I had taken a 2 or 3 day brainwashing course on Appreciative Inquiry, and I got the book there. And I'm just going to tell you, it's a sleeper, right? You read it, you're like, I hate reading it. It's super academic. And
that's rough.
My one eye's twitching and the other eye's closed, and it's hard to read. And then just out of sheer necessity, I kept throwing it in my briefcase when I was traveling earlier this year, and I read about half of it.
Yeah.
And I finally got through about half of it. I should say. I love it's a great book, and I want to get through the rest because I think it can have such a profound impact on myself and even the business in terms of how we do some of our planning and strategy. But some of those things are just hard to get through. I'm waiting for that spark where you can read the other half of the book.
I was in the same way with this one book. It was nonfiction, but it was super dense. It was about a Buddhist, maybe early 1900s, and kind of how he lived his life. And I thought it was going to be, that's really nice, really cool, easy read, but it was written by an academic, and it was really, really tough to get through. I got maybe 20 pages in, and I thought, this is not for me. This is not for me.
Yeah, it's like sandpaper butter on toast. You're trying. You asked about books. There's 2 other books that one is called Servant Leadership. We talked about leadership books. Servant Leadership is, I haven't read the whole book. I've actually read a bunch of other stuff around servant leadership, and Ari Weinswig, who heads up Zingerman's Delicatessen or Zingerman's family of businesses in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Ari is what does he call himself? A recovering anarchist and a servant leader. And he turned me on to servant leadership. And Ari writes ultimately volumes of short stories together. One is how to be a better manager, how to be a better leader, run a good business. And he's got 5 or 6 volumes of books now, and they sell little ones as pamphlets too.
Oh, that's cool.
And I've been in and out of his writings and again, it's that sandwich and pizza place. How good are they? Yeah. And reading his stories of how to treat your employees, how to build a business. He's also a member of Small Giants. Yeah. And I mentioned it was in Detroit and would be there. Otherwise, I'll stop in Ann Arbor on the way because along the path, Ari's become a friend. Yeah. So I'll just stop. And there's a few days a week he works in the restaurants because he wants to keep a feel and a pulse. So you'll get a chance sometimes and it's not about glomming on or anything like that. It's about saying hi and spending 5 or 10 minutes chatting. He's a wonderful human and he's a great writer.
You know what's wild is I do appreciate that about my parents. So for those that don't know, my parents built a food distribution company that imports goods from Ecuador and Peru, and we distribute as a wholesaler as well as our storefront. And when, because it was at the beginning, it was only a storefront. That's all it was. My dad even tells me, he's like, I didn't plan this to be the biggest, as big as it got. Because right now we distribute across the Midwest.
Wow.
Yeah, it's big. So like, they are always in the office managing paperwork or on calls and stuff. So, but when they come out of the office and they talk to the you can tell how much it means to them, or how much it means to the customers as well when they interact. You know, because they call it like a lot of it's like compadres or folks that they baptize, the parents baptize.
Multi-generations of their customers.
Yeah, and you know, they see the little ones. And you know what? I get it. Because when I'm there now, like I say hi to the little ones, and it's always fun, dude. Yeah. It's always fun. I'll be like, "Hola, señor," and I'll shake their hand, and they'll act like
all the little ones love it.
Yeah, it's awesome. So it's a nice vibe. It's a really nice vibe.
That's super cool, and I think people like to see the faces of those businesses.
Yeah,
I try to support local businesses as much as I can because there's a person there.
Oh yeah,
Walmart's a faceless business.
Yeah,
and I try again. We have to shop at big boxes, right? There's more there. It's convenient, the prices, whatever the case may be. But as often as I can, I'm trying to go to a local Ace Hardware to get with materials or tools, simply because I know that most of those, I think most of them are franchise stores, that they're owned by individuals like you and I.
Yeah.
And you're supporting. And listen, I understand Walmart supports plenty of families, et cetera, but I love a business with a face.
Yeah.
I love to be able, I don't have to talk to the owner, but just knowing that it's a small business and you're supporting it. I started COVID, I swore off Starbucks.
Really?
I've a good friend who owns a coffee shop and has owned it for 25 years, give or take. And COVID almost killed her business.
Oh.
She can't borrow as much money as Starbucks can.
Yeah.
Starbucks can borrow just buckets of money.
Yeah.
Because the banks say, "Oh, you're good for it. You have all this real estate, all this property, and you're Starbucks."
Yeah.
And my friend couldn't even get a PPP loan because her bank screwed the smaller businesses. And I made a conscious decision. Now, every once in a while, I'm trapped, and there's only Starbucks.
Yeah.
But I sort of give it up at some point.
No, that's a good point, and it's. I think. My buddy, you met him, Taylor. Taylor. He once. I told him like, I really love coffee. I really love it. And he even asked me like, "Oh, Logan has because we're by Logan Square, Avondale." Yeah. He's like, that area has tons of great coffee shops. Where do you go? And at that point, I replied with Dunkin'. I go to Dunkin'.
That's what I had this morning.
Yeah. And you know what? Today I had this one place, Collectivo, on Milwaukee. I don't know if you know, Milwaukee, California.
It sounds familiar.
It's so great. It's so awesome. And now I've been weaning off of caffeine. I've just been trying to do decaf. They're the only folks that actually brew decaf coffee. And they're really nice, too. I really enjoy it. And they're down the block from my parents' shop.
I will always. So it's funny when I travel, we're way off topic. Is this a digital marketing conversation?
No, it's fine. We're chatting. It's fine. We're going on 43 minutes.
I will, when I go to cities and I visit, and I'll be staying downtown, I will go out for a walk for coffee without using my phone. I'll just start wandering until I find an open coffee shop that's not named Starbucks.
Okay, that's cool.
But I do love my Dunkin' Donuts. I can't give them up.
I love the hazelnut syrup. I think they got rid of it. Yeah, they got rid of it. So I was bummed by it. So what can you do?
I have to remember that for the next time we get together. I'll bring you some.
Okay, thank you. So we're at 43, and I think lunch is. I'm not even sure lunch is wrapping up. So we might have something to eat. I know I'm starving.
We should probably wrap this up and get out.
Yeah,
get over there.
Steve, thank you so much. Honestly, it's an honor.
Thank you, Edwin,
man. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Glad we got to waste some more time together.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Take care.